me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like.
Yesterday, the United States and NATO entered their 11th year, their second decade of war in Afghanistan. It is, as the previous speaker mentioned, the longest war in American history. It's the longest war in the history of Afghanistan. Earlier this year, there were no fewer than 152,000 troops, foreign troops, in Afghanistan, all but perhaps 10,000 of them serving under NATO's so-called International Security Assistance Force. That is the largest number of foreign troops ever to be stationed in Afghanistan, and of course for the longest period of time. Yesterday, President Obama celebrated what he's now come to refer to as the 9/11 generation of U.S. soldiers who have fought in combat operations overseas in the past decade. He paid tribute to 500,000 U.S. soldiers who have been deployed in Afghanistan for the last year. That's 500,000 soldiers. Not at one time, but aggregately that number is the very same of peak U.S. military strength in Vietnam during the war in Indochina. Talk about the war in Afghanistan winding down. It will wind down when we demand it winds down, and not a moment before. Last year was the deadliest year in this decade-long slaughter and carnage in Afghanistan in every category. More U.S. soldiers, more non-U.S. NATO troops, more Afghan government, military, and security personnel, and most alarmingly, most Afghan civilians were killed last year than in any other year. So far this year, an estimated 2,500 Afghan civilians have been killed. At that pace, it's going to be deadlier than that last year. An NGO in the United States called Refugees International at the end of June documented that in the preceding 2 years, 250,000 Afghan civilians, that's 250,000 civilians, were forced to flee their cities and villages because of U.S. and NATO bombing raids, because, as one speaker mentioned earlier, special operations, which have tripled in number in recent years, that is attacked by special forces, soldiers, and helicopter gunships. This year, the Pentagon is spending an estimated $729 billion on war. That is a base budget and supplements for the occupation in Iraq and the war against the people of Afghanistan. In absolute dollar amounts, that's the highest in human history. In constant dollars adjusted for inflation, it's the highest since 1945, World War II. Without a single country in the world posing a threat to the United States, we are spending money for the Pentagon at World War II levels. Before the NATO summit last November in Lisbon, Portugal, Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen was quoted by Britain's Daily Telegraph saying, "The war in Afghanistan is a template or a model for NATO operations around the world." That has been proven in Libya. Today is the 204th day of an alliance whose collective population is 800 million people, bombing a small country of 6 million people. According to NATO's website today, they have flown over 25,000 air sorties in Afghanistan, over 9,000 combat missions, again, in a country of 6 million people. For the good of the people of Afghanistan and for the good of the people of the world, the Pentagon needs to be defunded and NATO needs to be abolished.